Director of the Office of Police Oversight. In order for us to get started, if you see your script, we need a member of the commission to call the meeting into order.
This is Suki McMahon. I will call this meeting the commission to order. We need commissioners to identify yourselves for the record. I believe that there's a alphabetical list if we wanted to do that, or if y'all don't want to pull that up, we can go alphabetically by first name. And I believe Commissioner C, we would start with you.
Amani C. I'm here. Thank you.
Grayson Turner, present.
João Paulo here.
Oh, Liz Castaneda. Oh, sorry, there was another J.
Commissioner Gonzalez-Bricker, you were on mute.
Sorry, Jessica Gonzalez-Bricker.
And I believe we missed Commissioner Flores.
Yes, Erica Flores here.
Commissioner McMahon here. I believe we have a couple more commissioners.
Richard Segovia is here.
Commissioner Tanya Rosamond here.
I believe that's everyone. Correct. Okay. As this is the first meeting of this commission, there's no permanent chair or vice chair. I move to select temporary chair. I apologize, Farrah. Did I jump out of order on that? Is there a second?
I second that motion.
All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
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 I believe that is an unanimous vote. Unless there are any no's, please raise your hand. Does anyone have a motion to nominate a chair?
Grayson Turner, I nominate Amani Say as chair for our commission.
Is there a second?
A second.
Richard Segovia, I'll second that.
All right, before we put this to a vote, is there any discussion from our commission? That there are no hands raised, I'll move to a vote. All in favor of electing Commissioner C as our chair, raise your hand, please. Commissioners Segovia and Rosamond, we do not have you on screen. We can't see you. And Commissioner Castaneda, is that a yes from you?
Yes.
My vote is yes. Richard Segovia, my vote is yes.
Yeah.
All right. As a temporary chair, I see the floor to our chair, Commissioner C.
Thank you, Suki. I would love to know if there's anyone who wants to motion to nominate a vice chair.
I'll motion to nominate Suki McMahon as vice chair.
Is there a second on that?
Grayson Turner, I second that.
Okay. And we'll go ahead and take a vote for Suki. If you'll please both raise your hand and indicate yay or nay.
Yay.
Are there any abstains or declined? I can't see everyone on my screen. My apologies. So just for the record, there are no abstains and no denials. Is that correct? Great, thank you. So I would love to cede the floor to the Vice Chair, Suki, if you'll take us on into our agenda. Thank you.
I'll happily do that. I believe we are on to item 1D, our mission and vision statements. Everyone should have a copy of the mission and vision statements. And I'd like to open the floor for discussion on those. Farah, is that a part of a slide, or are we just looking at the copies that it does? There we go. All right. This is our proposed mission statement. The Community Police Review Commission listens to and promotes the community's voice in policing and public safety in Austin. We champion conduct, practices and policies centered in dignity and equity. I'd like to open this up to discussion if there are any comments or requested changes. Or if there are, then the item may be continued until the next meeting. I will open it to discussion. Okay, see, which I'm a little concerned. I'm sure, like some of you all, my connection's a little choppy, but I will move to a vote. Is there a motion to amend or make changes, or is there a motion to put this to a vote?
Grayson Turner, I motion to put this to a vote the way it is. So I just need someone to second it.
I'll second that. I'll second that.
All right, there seems to be consensus on adopting this item. Let's put it to a vote, please. If you, please raise your hand if you are a yay for this mission statement. Please raise your hand if you are a no. Okay, seeing none. We will say that mission statement has been adopted by this commission. Let's move on to our vision statement, please. Our proposed vision statement, we envision all Austin communities having transparent, fair, thorough, and public safety processes and policies. I believe there is a small typo there. I'm not sure that we will need to delay a vote or any discussion outside of that, but let's go ahead and open it to discussion. Are there any comments or proposed motions to amend or change the document?
Richard Segovia, I motion that we move forward with the vision statement as it is after correcting that small typo.
Grayson Turner, I second that.
Great. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Great. Seeing none, we will call that approved vision statement for the CPRC. Next on our agenda, 2A, are bylaws. We have all seen this document, and I believe that there is a link there if you need it. Is there any discussion? I'd like to open the floor to discussion on this item. Okay. Hearing none, I will move to a vote on this item for our bylaws. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, all opposed, please raise your hand. I believe we are have an approved set of bylaws. We are on to item 2B, the reimagining presentation. And after this presentation, we'll open to the floor for questions.
Hi, this is Farah Muscadin, Director of Office of Police Oversight, to go over the presentation. The one minor thing that we missed, I don't know if the commission still would like to introduce themselves and say a little bit about themselves. We missed that on the agenda, or we can come back to it. Whatever you guys would like to do, I'm happy to do the presentation now and come back to it, or pause for a minute for you to do introductions.
I apologize for skipping that. I would like for us to do introductions. My apologies to my colleagues.
We're going in alphabetical order. I think I'm maybe first.
I believe that we can move alphabetically again. Go ahead.
Sorry. I'm Jessica Gonzalez-Bricker. I live in North Central Austin, and I work in criminal justice research, and I'm excited to be part of the commission.
I'm Erica Flores, and I live in Northeast Austin. I've been involved in a lot of different youth and education programs here in Austin for a while, and I'm really excited to be part of this commission.
Grayson Turner, retired Army veteran, extremely South Austin. And it's a pleasure to work with my colleagues here on the commission.
Hi, I'm Liz Castaneda. I live in Southeast Austin. I work for a statewide mental health nonprofit called Be a Hope, and I'm a person in mental health and substance use recovery. And I'm also wrapping up a term on the HHSC Behavioral Health Advisory Committee.
Hi, this is Richard Segovia. I am privileged to serve on this commission. I'm employed with a state agency where I do policy analysis, policy writing, and program management work. I have a background in law enforcement education, and I'm currently a PhD candidate working on applied research on reimagining police training.
Hi, I'm Tanya Rosamond. I'm an immigration attorney here in Austin, and I live in the Cedar Park area, which is the suburb of Austin.
I'm Suki McMahon. I am the Strategic Director at Austin Justice Coalition and the manager of the roundtables on the future of justice policy at the Columbia Justice Lab. And I also live in North Central Austin.
Hi, I'm João Paulo Connolly. I also am a community organizer with the Austin Justice Coalition. I work on housing and community development policy. I'm also a member of the city's planning commission, and I live in Central East Austin.
I believe that's everyone. If you haven't had an opportunity, please unmute and introduce yourselves. Otherwise, Farah, I would turn it to you.
I think Amani had
Okay.
to step off and was going to call back in.
Okay, we can give them a minute to get the presentation up.
Hello, this is Amani C. Can you all hear me? Okay,
Yes.
I was having some audio issues. Hello, everyone. I am an Austin native, and my background is in marketing, communications, and advocacy work. So I'm excited to join my other commissioners. Thank you so much.
Okay, I think that was everyone, right? Okay. Well, good evening, Commission. Thank you for this opportunity to give you an update, and really it's more than an update, just kind of a brief overview of Reimagining Public Safety. Again, my name is Farah Muscadin, Director of the Office of Police Oversight. And let's go to the next slide. So I think you may know that in June, Council passed several police reform resolutions over a variety of topics. We're going to go to that next, but on this particular slide, it talks about the changes that Council approved in August, September-ish, as it relates to the budget and how the budget and the dollars allocated to APV have been disseminated. And so when we look at the column on the left and we're talking about immediate reductions and reallocations, that was about $31.5 million. And that was an aggregate of basically everything that you see before, changing of the delaying and canceling cadet classes, reducing overtime, looking at vacancies in the mounted patrol unit. And then we have about $31.5 million in reinvestment. And these reinvestments were in various areas, particularly with providing additional resources to EMS and APH, increasing the mental health response with particularly with the expansion of MCOT. Obviously, the Office of Police Oversight, the Civil Rights Office, and also the Equity Office. There were investments there, particularly, and then investments that that go directly to the community in terms of food access, substance abuse resources, family support and reentry, added additional investment into mental health and host. So all of those combined equaled about $31.5 million. And then we looked at also in the budget that was approved, the decoupling. And basically what that means is the departments within APD that don't necessarily need to stay in the department, and if there are better alignments. And so, for example, looking at forensics, the communication center, the 911 center, support services, those are more so administrative like HR and finance. We're looking at victim services, internal affairs, special investigations unit. Those are all pretty much in discussions about possible decoupling. And then the Reimagine Fund, and this is a fund that is set aside that the city manager and city staff have to come back to council to look at how this particular area can be viewed in a different way and literally reimagined as we broaden how we consider public safety. Next slide. So the other considerations that came from the approved budget is that city staff have to come back to council in 6 months with evaluation of those various areas that I just discussed, and also recommendations for any changes in the budget, particularly when we look at that Reimagine Fund. And then looking at potentially a new Department of Emergency Communications and Technology. There have been several ideas put forth of different departments of public safety, more on like a regional basis and how that might look. I believe there have already been conversations, particularly in the Public Safety Commission, about relocating APD headquarters and finding just a different location. I'm not quite sure if the building meets the needs of the department, and what, they're going to look into what other options are more viable. And then also looking at park ranger program rather than the park police. So those are some things that still, obviously, when we're talking about reimagining public safety, and we're talking also a component of that is obviously the police department. It's a complex undertaking that is very layered, and so we're looking at the specific areas. It's going to be a gradual process in terms of how we get to the outcomes that the community has requested and is demanding. Next slide, please. So again, this goes to the resolutions, and a lot of these resolutions were passed in June, I believe June 11th. Resolution 50 essentially sets a goal for zero disparities in stops, arrests, and searches. And so it was the foundation of the zero disparities, and in that approach was the joint analysis on APD's racial profiling report that was done by my office, the Equity Office, and the Innovation Office, that showed disproportionalities for particularly African American and Hispanic, Latinx communities as it relates to stops, searches, and arrests. And we're working collaboratively on tying that to the strategic direction of the city, and that's what SC23 means. It's Strategic Direction 2023, and tying those metrics specifically to that and tracking it over time so that we can see progress in terms of disproportionality in those, particularly in traffic stops. And then there's also in that resolution requires changes to APD general orders. It requires that the Office of Police Oversight look at ways to minimize use of force and also officer-involved deaths, and doing research in that area. Next slide, please. Resolution 66 was a resolution that was approved and passed by council in December of last year. And this particular resolution calls for a pretty in-depth analysis of pretty much the whole department, from recruitment to training to looking at use of force over a 6-month time frame to looking at communications among officers. It also is going to look at all the contacts that the police department has had with the community in a 6-month time frame. It is going to look at how promotions are done. And so right now we are in the process of selecting a consultant to do that work. And we're really looking forward to that commencing because it really ties to the umbrella conversation of reimagining public safety, and really looking forward to that analysis that'll be done by the consultant. Next slide. And Resolution 95 was specifically tied to some of the incidents that we saw with the protests that occurred in late May, particularly as it relates to use of tear gas and impact munitions. And it also requires an in-depth look of use of force policy and ways to incorporate de-escalation. It requires that OPO look into better ways of alternative response to resistance. Response to resistance is a term that the police department uses, most commonly used as use of force. That's how most people understand it. And so we'll be looking at alternative ways of use of force and ways to minimize that. It also looks at reducing the use of military equipment, and then also calls for the delay of the summer cadet class. Next slide, please. And then Resolution 96 was specifically tied to the budget and looked at the APD sworn positions. It looked at reallocating different roles within the department, particularly outside units. It allocated, included language that would allocate funding to OPO to rewrite the APD general orders, and also requiring that community input be in that process, and delineates particular policies. For example, if you see use of force, de-escalation, search and seizure, body cam, again, included but not limited to, but gives us a guide in terms of the policies that they would like us to prioritize as we look to rewrite the general orders, and also audit into disciplinary records, and increasing staffing for mental health response, and providing funding. And that you can kind of see that in the first slide when we talked about the budget, and when we talked about also the reinvestment of funds, particularly that $31.5 million that goes to the last bullet of programs designed to reduce and eliminate arrest and harm reduction strategies. So those are all aligned with different ways of also looking at public safety. Next slide. I am a member of the City Manager's Reimagining leadership team, and so we meet weekly. And again, as I talked about before, it's a very complex issue. And so a lot of the changes that the community is looking for, we anticipate making, but it will take some time because we need to do the research and we need to consult with subject matter experts and really understand kind of the full scope of what does these changes mean and how to best implement public safety in a different way to the community. And you may have seen there have been several conversations on the Public Safety Committee regarding 911 calls and that analysis of kind of where the calls are coming from, how they're responded to. So there's really some great work and great information in that area. I've already mentioned kind of the metrics and the benchmarks that we're looking at with the strategic direction in terms of tracking over the next several years any sort of disproportionality of stops and mitigating those and putting whatever strategies we can in place so that we can get to a point where zero disparities. I know that that may seem aspirational, but I do think that it is something that we can achieve. We're ongoing work on the forensic lab and where that will live. And there's a huge community component. There's absolutely no desire to do this in a vacuum because we all understand that public safety affects every single person that not only lives in
website for that, austintexas.gov/public safety. It is updated almost daily because there's just so much information that we need to provide to the community. There are listening sessions that are happening throughout the city in every council districts. Focus groups have been happening internally with the with the departments that are looking at the decoupling, but there will be focus groups community-wide, surveys. Obviously, we live in a diverse community, so ensuring language access and the information that we have is translated, that is a priority. And then, for example, we anticipate, particularly as for example, with use of force, that there will be themed engagement sessions around those to get input from various members of our community about the direction of use of force and the policies and ways in which we can minimize those. So I think I talked about the other things, but those are probably the high level things that we are talking about as a leadership team and as how we're molding kind of how we, not really molding, but facilitating how we reimagine public safety, but more specifically with the police department. Next slide. We, the city manager's request, we formed a city community reimagining task force. I'm also on this task force with our deputy city manager and 2 assistant city managers, Chris Shorter and also Ray Ariano, and our chief equity officer, Brian Oakes. And we have about 15 community members. And this task force was really an opportunity to bring the city and community members together to have conversations about what reimagining public safety means. And I want to be sure that I share with not only the commission, but those who are listening, we're looking at providing those who are more disproportionately negatively impacted by policing a voice at a very important table as we're looking at how we do things differently. I think it's really important that we have those voices at the table. Many times they're not. And so we've had a few meetings. Our next meeting is Tuesday, October 20th from 6 to 8 p.m. and it will be broadcasted live. And I'm looking forward to working with this task force. There's an array of different perspectives and different positions on things. And I think that this is where we, can work together with the community, do some consensus building and really get to the point where we're, providing public safety in an equitable way where, everyone in our community feels, safe and treated with dignity as you included in your mission statement. And so these are some of the top kind of topics, priorities that the task force has put together. And so we, are tackling them, pretty much one at a time, but we're getting there slowly but surely with really kind of rolling up our sleeves and figuring out what this actually looks like and bringing it to fruition. Next slide, please. And so I'm just going to go through this very quickly, but there's a lot of pre-existing work that was happening within the police department, and a lot of this is tied to some of the resolutions. So, for example, in this first box, it is related to some recommendations that were made to the police department from an investigation that was held by Lisa Tatum regarding some racially motivated allegations that were made of an assistant chief. And so that work is ongoing. She has been doing a lot of training and analysis of the police department and assisting them on strategies to address racial inequities and institutional racism. There also work that's going on, again, I know from our perspective, and when I mean our, I mean the commission and OPO, we are, primarily focused on the police department, but public safety is broader. It includes other public safety, and this particular next bullet talks about equity and dispatch as it relates to EMS and the fire department. So these are all components, again, of reimagining public safety. And then there's still ongoing work with the consultant that was retained on how sexual assault cases are processed and investigated. And again, that falls under this bigger umbrella. Next slide. And the rest of these, we're currently, I talked about Resolution 66, where we're working to retain a consultant to do that deep dive. And that should be happening in short order. And then as it relates to some of these other resolutions that I've gone over, for example, there is a video review panel that is looking at all the videos that are showed at the police academy, and that's part of resolution 66 and moving that forward. So there is a lot of work that has been done, that has been started, that is still in progress. And as you can see on the right, it is cross-departmental, and OPO and Equity Office are very much at the table of these conversations and a part of the process. Next step. All right, so that was a quick, maybe slow update on reimagining public safety. There's, as you can imagine, it is a huge undertaking, but it's also an exciting time to do this work and to be a part of this process. I truly believe that we can get there. I wouldn't be in oversight if I didn't think that we could have one of the best police departments and improve that relationship with the community and work towards that. It's bumpy, it will be bumpy, but I think the bumps are worth it because I think that our mutual goals and the commission and OPO and I would include the police department are mutual, and I think we can get there. And so I'm happy to answer any questions. I know that was a lot of information, but I think it's important that the commission know, because it does touch you. It will touch you as this commission. It will touch you as members of our community, what we're working on with RPS, because your input will be asked and it will be appreciated and taken into consideration. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that.
Hi, Farah. I have a question. We looked at some timelines.
I can't hear you. I apologize.
Okay. Can anyone else hear me? Am I? Is it on? Okay.
She may need to call back in again. It looks like she dropped the phone line and just was using the her computer again. So we may need to have her actually call in.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll wait. It's a question for her, so.
Is not valid, or the meeting is not started yet. Re-enter your access code.
I think, JC, I think she's dialing back in right now.
Somehow I got disconnected. I saw JP was talking, but I couldn't hear him.
Right, we can give her.
Yeah, hi, Farah. I had two quick questions about timeline. We looked at some items that have sort of a projected timeline for them, but I was wondering specifically about the in the Reimagine highlights when we talk about the decoupling. I was wondering if there are more specific timelines around some of the decoupling efforts. And another question related was also specifically about the Reimagining Task Force. If there's some sort of a process for what kind of weight the task force's recommendations will have.
Okay, so to the first question, the timeline, the work on the decoupling is happening pretty much on a daily basis. But I will give you the timeline that I know won't change, and that is the change that the city has to come back to council in 6 months. So I think that would be, it starts from October 1, so I think that will be in March. And there's a pretty clear expectation that movement based on council direction is made in that time frame. But I do feel pretty strongly that there will probably be some updates, or there will be some updates before that March timeframe. But things are definitely moving, but that is the one I know like is very set in stone. In regards to the task force, Yeah, so I mean, I would say that the task force is advisory in nature, but one thing that I've been on a lot of task force, not only here in the city or working groups, but just professionally. And I think one thing that is the biggest difference on this task force is that the deputy city manager and 2 assistant city managers are on it as members. And so, and that particularly that are leading these efforts as delegated to by the city manager. So I think that particularly with the community members, their perspective will weigh very heavily in what's pushed forward. And so I can't sit here and tell you that, like, if the task force says something's going to happen, it's going to happen. I think that would be unrealistic to say, but I do think that having the key players at the table with community members who fundamentally make the decision on the change is a very big deal, and I rarely see that professionally. So that to me hopefully is a signal to the community that the city is taking this very seriously and that we want to kind of do this together and work towards this change in a collaborative fashion. Were there any other questions?
I do have a question. That task force, for the purposes of transparency with the community, are they able to provide updates to the public, or is there some confidentiality built into that task force?
No, there's none. At our last meeting, we approved our governance structure, and there is none. The task force has kind of voted, I believe it was unanimous, or maybe it was close to have the meetings be public. And so the first meeting will be October 20th at 6 p.m., and that will be streamed live. But there are no, it's very kind of opposite than the CPRC in terms of there are no restrictions in terms of what they can say. We do have community agreements, and so we just have an expectation that whatever is said publicly is, with respect, really, and understanding.
Can you tell us a little bit about this commission fitting into this Reimagine Public Safety initiative that is happening here in Austin?
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time?
Yes, my question is, I do appreciate this presentation, and I do have a sense of how we might fit in as the CPRC, but can you provide to us and to the community how you envision this group getting involved in this reimagining?
Oh, okay, absolutely. Yeah, so I definitely see, particularly as OPO takes on the undertaking of the APD rewrite of the general orders, I definitely see the commission, the CPRC, being a part of that process. I see particularly as a thought partner, there are definitely going to be opportunities for feedback on various decisions that are made. And so I think that particularly as it relates to the police department, I think that the CPRC will be a key partner in the work that's coming forward, and that there will be consideration, particularly with from my perspective as the director, I want to keep this commission informed about what we're doing on that work and getting your input on it so that I can relay that back. I think that you all are a key stakeholder in this process, and why I also think that the reimagine of the CPRC and the inception, the timing couldn't be better because we are at such a critical time when we're talking about public safety. So from my standpoint, I see opportunities to be very much involved in terms of providing feedback and input on essentially, the whole kind of Reimagine bucket.
Hello, this is Amani C. As it pertains to the I have a question. Yes. About the rewriting of the general orders. I would love some clarity on the timeline for that, and when you envision those being republished.
Yeah, so that timeline is a work in progress, and I'll be very frank with you because the APD General Orders is 786 pages, and so it was probably something that just grew and grew and grew over decades, right? And so we're in conversations now about how to prioritize some of the general orders, in addition to keeping in mind some of the work that has already been started and that will come in terms of review of the police department so that we're not being duplicative. And there's some analysis that's coming forward that will help inform the direction of policy. And so we're trying to be very mindful of that and also ensuring that we get input from across the board on it. I mean, I know personally when I particularly on subjects, I think it's important to get community perspective, but also, have some sort of law enforcement expertise on some of the changes. So we're working through those. I see the rewrite as the long game. I think it will take anywhere between 6 months to a year, and I think it's going to have to be a phased approach, because they're divided into chapters, but some of the chapters impact the other chapters. So we really have to be strategic on how we do that, and very methodical. And so I personally have asked staff to really think that through. There are very few opportunities that I can think of that an oversight agency will be doing this type of work, and also so collaboratively with the community, because I believe there are 2 resolutions that say specifically that there will be community input on changes to APD general orders. So I think that that is fabulous and very important, but comes with community input is time. It takes time to get that. And so, but I welcome that, because I think by doing that and by getting the diverse perspectives, we get the best product. And so we're starting that process of kind of putting like a schedule or a plan together. And I imagine probably in the next month or so, we'll have a better timeline. But I do think that it is this is the long game. This is going to take some time, because not only do we have to, we are fundamental, when we suggest policy, we do the research. We look at best practices. We look at what other cities are doing. And that kind of stuff takes time to do that before we put forward a recommendation for APD to change policy. So I have that same expectation for this process. And then an added layer to this, which I appreciate, is going out to the community to get their input on it, and also taking it as an opportunity to educate the community about the various APD policies, right? I mean, I don't think that anybody would think their policy manual is 786 pages long, right? But we know that there are particularly, like, I'm prioritizing in my mind the general orders that have public interaction first, right? I'm not going to look at the uniform policy first, right? Like, that just doesn't quite make sense. We really need to look at the areas where police engage the community first. And so it'll happen. I'm looking forward to it. We have, fortunately, through the reinvestments, additional resources to bring on staff to do that work. But it is going to take us a while. I do think it'll be a project for most, if not all, 2021. I apologize. I do have a slight delay on my since I'm on the phone, but I don't know if there were any other questions. I'm happy to answer any more questions because I do think it's important that the commission is very well informed about RPS, and we do intend to keep you informed about what's going on as well. Okay. Well, thank you for this opportunity to speak before you on Reimagining Public Safety. You all know how to reach me if something else comes up, but we definitely, as I mentioned before, will keep you updated as things progress and move forward. Thank you again.
Thanks for that, Farah. All right, we are on to agenda item 3. This is future agenda items. This item's to ensure that any item that was tabled or postponed will put on the next agenda. I do not believe that there is anything that was tabled or postponed. I think that would have been a vision or mission statement. So we will move on to comments. I'd like to inform our speakers that you are limited to 3 minutes, and we ask that you please stay on topic behind and not speak up beyond what was posted. You may speak on the selection of the chair or vice chair and staff briefings, including comments on the proposed bylaws.
This is Daniel at Austin City Hall. We do not have any call-in users.
Thank you so much. All right, I believe that that was the final item on our agenda. Please correct me if I am wrong on that. All right, I believe we may be finished with our first meeting of the CPRC. Thank you to our chair for allowing me to first day. I'm very proud to be here and be working with you all. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Hello, this is Amani. Thank you so much, Suki. I motion to adjourn.
I second that, Grayson Turner.
And I do apologize for my terrible internet connection. I believe I've been speaking over people unintentionally. I believe we had a second, and we can close this meeting.
So it sounds like we lost you, Suki, at the end of that, but I just want to reinforce we're declaring this meeting adjourned. Thank you so much, commissioners. Thank you so much to our community that is viewing.
All right, John, thank you so much.
Good night.
Se transforma deprisa de más. ¿Quién por corazón mantengo la tristeza de ver todo eso a perder? En la soledad